Hi everyone, good evening. Can you all hear me okay? Thumbs up? Yeah, okay, perfect. Good evening, everybody. So allow me to just quickly introduce myself. My name is Happy Reno. I am the Executive Director of BC Bereavement Helpline. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here on time. I appreciate you guys. Let me just, we'll give it a little minute to have people join us in.
Let's do that.
Feel free
I can
to
help
leave.
you with admissions too, okay?
Okay, all right. That's great. Thanks, Brad. Okay, so just before we begin, I would like to thank everyone for being here with us. Whether you're an ally or someone honoring a person, thank you so much for being here with us. Before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge that BC Bereavement Helpline is on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Kikai First Nation along with all Halkomilim speaking peoples in other Coast Salish nations. At this point, I would like to invite you all to take a moment and think about the land that you're on and the indigenous people who cared for this land. Feel free to share in the chat where you're joining us from and the land acknowledgement if you like. Um, in our work at BC Bereavement Helpline, we recognize that grief and loss are part of every community story. This includes Indigenous communities, and we are very grateful to share this space together in spirit of care and learning. All right. So, just before we continue with this presentation, I would like to go ahead and share the floor to Jessica. I'll be doing her formal acknowledgement and introduction later, but we can just do grounding for this moment. Jessica, I'll give the floor to you now.
Thank you, Happy. So glad to see so many faces. I know and so many people joining us today. It takes a lot to be here, and thank you for those who have their cameras on. It just makes us feel so much closer. I'll invite you just for a minute to ground with me and just take a couple of breaths together. So you may want to put both feet on the floor. You don't have to close your eyes. You may just want to gaze down. You may want to put your hands looking up on your palms if you feel more like receiving, or looking down if you feel more like grounding. And let's find our breath together. And take an in breath when you're ready. Long in breath. Holding a bit at the top. And a longer exhale. Finding the breath again at the bottom. This time we're reminding ourselves that we're breathing together and connecting. So long in breath. Holding at the top. And on the exhale, imagine the air running through your bodies, softening the heart and opening the heart to what you're experiencing tonight. Finding the breath at the bottom. And last in breath and out breath on your own, at your rhythm. And when we find the breath at the bottom, maybe just acknowledging what the body needs. Maybe it's a little shake, maybe it's a little stretch, and release. And this breathing invites us to it says we're starting. It also says we can regulate ourselves. So wherever you need to regulate yourself, go to the breath, find your breath. Okay. And after breathing together, I have my candle here. And this is something we do in our support group. So I have my candle here. And I will light this candle. I'll have this candle lit as we spend this time together. And I'm lighting this candle for each and every one of you. Again, for the courage it takes to show up and to turn on your camera. But also, this light in this candle is for those who have passed us in memory of them. Thank you. Happy?
Yeah, thank you so much, Jessica, for grounding us. Just a little bit of introduction about BC Bereavement Helpline. If you are hearing our name for the first time, we are a province-wide registered charity that is in a mission to provide support to anyone coping with grief and loss. So if you or know anyone who would who would need our support, know that we are here. Our helpline is open from Monday to Friday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Send us an email if you like if you need more information about us. All right, so I'll go ahead and proceed with the introduction. It is my joy to introduce our first speaker for tonight, Brad Martin, a registered therapeutic counselor in British Columbia and Alberta. He is a graduate of the Clear Mind International Training Institute and has been managing his own counseling and consulting practice since 2018. Brad brings a rich and unique background to his work, having retired from the Calgary Police Service after a fulfilling 25-year career. His commitment to grief support is also grounded in personal experience. He has lived through homicide, suicide, and traumatic loss, allowing him to connect with others with profound compassion and understanding. A dedicated community helper, Brad occasionally facilitates BCBH homicide and suicide grief support groups and contributes his extensive policing and therapeutic expertise to the BCBH Board of Directors. His guidance and presence strengthens our mission, that is to ensure that no one in BC grieves alone. Everybody, if you're ready, give me a thumbs up. Let's all welcome Brad Martin.
Thank you. Thank you. My thumbs are up. Hold the applause, please. You're deafening me. It's so wonderful to see so many faces. I have you on a gallery view of my computer here. And I'm excited about what this time together where we remember the International Survivors of Suicide Loss Day, which is coming up on November the 22nd. That was the motivator for this event. The BCBH, under Happy's direction, wanted to make sure we acknowledged that significant event. And I'm glad to be a part of this evening with you. I'm going to share my screen right away and just jump right into it. We have a limited time, and I'm excited to see how the evening goes. So stand by with me if you will 1 second, and I'll put up a PowerPoint presentation for you. I think.
It's on. You just need to do the presenter mode, Brad. Okay, perfect.
Does it look good?
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right, I'm here with you this evening, as I said, to talk about living with the suicide loss. And as Happy said, my experience is lived. Both family members have experienced the loss of suicide from family members, and as a police officer in Calgary, Alberta, I was witness to many traumatic events that involved that event as well. So the emotional impact and challenges of suicide, I'm quite certain that many of you know, causes deep emotional pain. There's a stigma associated with it in some cases. But the grief is unique from other bereavement types. We're going to talk tonight about healing and growth, and remind you that while grief may not disappear, individuals can grow in that process, in the grieving process, and find hope and honor the loved one's memory, if that's desired. We've actually experienced people who are dealing with suicide where the person who has passed was not necessarily loved in life, but the grief was still real for those that remain. So it's a unique situation. But most times, the person who is gone is honored by those who remain. And we're going to talk about community and connection as well, where seeking connection with supportive communities is vital in the healing journey after a suicide loss. We're looking to understand trauma after suicide loss, and that process makes us aware that there is an emotional and physical impact from this event. And we know from experience as we deal with those who are grieving that survivors experience intense emotions like shock and extreme sadness and physical symptoms that even impact sleep and physical well-being. It affects the brain. Trauma causes intrusive thoughts, difficulty concentrating, and persistent questioning of the loss. It's all a part of the process. And what we are aware of also at BCBH is that there is a need for support. Um, Healing requires time and patience, help from and connection with others who understand. And so many times, those around us who witness us grieving or experiencing loss really don't know what to say, and oftentimes will say or do the wrong things. So then, the experience of suicide loss exposes us to grief and shock and guilt. Shock from sudden loss causes numbness, disorientation in survivors, and complicates the grieving process. The emotional cycles put us through sadness, anger, and self-blame, which can delay healing if it's unaddressed. The path to recovery or dealing with grief comes through supportive counseling and peer groups who aid in processing emotions, fostering self-compassion and healing. If you're fortunate enough to have a support group that knows how to assist you in that time, then you're very blessed. Many people go through the process of traumatic loss without the proper support that helps them deal with that matter. Some withdraw. Withdrawal is an initial process. It helps an individual create space to give time to process the intense grief and regulate emotions. But withdrawal for a prolonged period of time is counterproductive. Extended isolation can increase loneliness and despair, making healing even more challenging. I think of a time during one of the support groups that I was involved with where a man who was dealing with the loss of his sister had been stuck in that grief for over 25 years. And when he finally found a support group where he could share his grief and see that there was sameness in others who had gone through the same process, his ability to see the loss and deal with the loss was changed dramatically. So it's important that we balance withdrawal from the pain with supportive relationships that foster comfort, validation, and belonging. We have healing through connection, and I know that many people um, miss this initially, but it's absolutely true. Connection fosters resilience and hope and helps survivors heal by sharing experiences and reducing the sense of isolation. The support groups that the BCBH offers offer safe spaces for expression and counseling, and they provide safe, non-judgmental environments for expressing feelings and normalizing grief. The practical benefits of connection uh, help us deal with and identify coping strategies and identify access to resources so that we can find a place that will serve us best in our process. Building relationships brings emotional relief, renewed purpose, and a profound sense of belonging for survivors. It's interesting to note that grief has no expiration date. It evolves over time and does not follow a fixed or linear timeline, challenging societal expectations of a quick recovery. You may, if you're dealing with traumatic loss or grief of any kind, have heard someone say, "Get over it, just suck it up, move forward, and deal with the thing that's going on." But our experience and our wisdom teaches us that grief does not follow a specific order of events that it used to be thought. We are aware that sadness comes, and then peace comes, and then anger comes, and then the gamut of emotions is varied, and it's all over the map. And everyone's journey with grief is unique. Survivors learn to grow around the grief by building resilience and adapting instead of seeking complete closure. You may have heard the phrase, "I'm looking for closure." Really, there's no such thing. One of the models that we use in our support groups with the BCBH is that of placing grief in a jar, and and the idea that we just get bigger around the grief uh, as it and we just have a greater capacity to deal with the grief rather than have the grief shrink. We just grow, and that comes from um, honoring our feelings, and without judgment, we foster compassion and emotional healing. We also deal with healing by maintaining the bonds with the person who's deceased and integrating the loss of the life story as part of the mourning process. On the day that we're born, we're already destined to die one day. Death is a part of the life process, and suicide is a traumatic way for a life to end. But in the support groups and connection with other people, we can learn to accept that um, there's a process, and we can learn to live with that and grow bigger with it. There's healing in the power of mourning. Mourning is a process. Apart from grief. It's a crucial process that allows emotional release and supports learning to live with the grief. It involves rituals and remembrance to honor the deceased and help integrate the loss into daily life, telling stories about the loss, the one who's departed, and remembering that person to other people is a big part of the mourning process, and it's an active part of the traumatic loss support groups that the BCBH offers, where every participant has a chance to remember the one who has passed in a way that isn't normally practiced with those who would not understand. Mourning fosters community solidarity, providing comfort through shared grief. And we see this in the way that some communities will show a visible sign of loss, like, for example, those in some European countries where there's a designated time to wear a certain color to indicate that there has been a loss. That's what we're talking about for mourning, to remember those that have gone before. And mourning, if you have a specific practice of mourning, transforms, helps survivors maintain connection to the one who has gone and keeps the memory alive. In order to move through the process of grief, it requires courage and resilience. Resilience means that we face pain with determination, while courage is seeking help despite fear and sadness. Supportive relationships, self-care, and purposeful living build and nurture survivors' inner strength. And resilience comes when we face an adversity, With courage and support, we can grow beyond the grief, grow bigger than the grief that we are carrying. Support matters. One of the big messages that the BCBH delivers time and time out, daily, every day of the year. You are not alone. And we encourage people to find help when they are grieving. Connecting with empathic individuals provides emotional validation and reduces the feelings of isolation for survivors. So many times we have heard people say, I felt so all alone. I didn't know anyone else felt this way. We've seen people come to our groups and say, I felt like a freak. Everyone I talked to didn't understand. But when you seek out the right places and connect with the right people, um, you find validation, and that isolation will disappear. Support networks include family, friends, professionals, and peer groups offering practical help and belonging. Support groups help survivors navigate complex emotions like guilt and anger by providing coping strategies and guidance. There's strength in seeking help. It's not a sign of weakness, but actually a sign of strength, with compassionate communities offering hope and encouragement through healing. I've put up a slide here of many of the essential support groups that are in the lower mainland. Um, my camera is blocking the view here. The Crisis Center, the BC Suicide Prevention Line, BC Mental Health Support Line, Canadian Mental Health Association. I found this one here, the Coup Us Crisis Line, which is a completely indigenous group, support group for suicide, people considering suicide or dealing with suicide loss. There's even the BC government has a 211 for information, and of course, the BC Bereavement Helpline is available for you to reach out to and take advantage of if you're dealing with loss and don't have the support that you think you need. I'm grateful to be here tonight. I hope this information was helpful to you. I look forward to hearing what goes on in the rest of the night, and we'll be taking questions later on. Happy.
Thank you so much, Brad, for that information
Mhm.
and for sharing with us. I hope everybody is still doing okay. Take a deep breath. And thank you so much for staying with us. All right, I'll go with our second speaker. Just know that you have an opportunity to ask question later. Feel free to put your question in the chat as well, and we'll deal with that later as soon as after Jessica has done her presentation. But in the meantime, allow me to share with you a little bit more information about Jessica. It is our privilege, of course, to have her with us tonight. So Jessica Wolf Ortiz is a registered clinical counselor with 24 years of experience and a master's degree in family therapy. Jessica's dedication to grief work is rooted in her own lived experience of losing loved one to suicide, an experience that fuels her compassionate and informed approach to supporting others. Jessica currently serves as one of the BC Bereavement Helpline's Suicide Grief Support Group and also a facilitator and trainer of traumatic loss facilitation training. She previously led the bereavement program of the Crisis Center of BC for 3 years, and her extensive background also includes roles as a crisis intervention university instructor, hotline supervisor, and educator in suicide prevention, intervention, and postvention. She is a celebrated TED Talk speaker and the author of Overcoming Suicide Bereavement: The Stories of Those Left Behind. Jessica brings both professional expertise and profound empathy to her work. She holds a deep belief that healing is possible and that our suffering can be transformed into strength, connection, and meaningful change. Are you guys ready for Jessica? Give a thumbs up. Awesome. Jessica, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Happy. Thank you for that presentation. I'm glad to see some familiar faces. Thank you for being here. I'm honored to know you. Um, um, I'm from Mexico, and when I was studying psychology many years ago, I lost a friend to suicide, and it hit me really hard. And I had to choose a topic for my dissertation, and I so and I did it on suicide loss. It helped me understand what I was going through, and then I was able to help others. And so it's very close to my heart, this topic, and my heart feels for you if you're experiencing such a loss. So hopefully I can share with you some information. I'm going to share my screen. I have a presentation. I'm going to be trying to use the presentation more as a guide and a conversation. This presentation is called One Event Does Not Define a Life, Understanding Suicide Loss. I'm going to stop there. What does it mean one event does not define a life? Sometimes suicide hits in our lives, and then everything becomes suicide. The person we loved is the person who suicided, not the person who lived. Suicide is just it takes just a moment for a person to die by suicide, but they lived for maybe 10, 15, 20, 30, 50 years. And then in one single event, it seems that their lives are erased. So just be mindful that one event should not define a life. Defend that. Your people lived, even though they died. It doesn't matter how they died, they lived. So hold that close to your heart. So one event does not define a life. When I do my land acknowledgements, I usually like to say that this is the territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations, but it's the land I love, live, but I also grieve. We all grieve in these lands. And also acknowledging that these lands have beautiful power healing energies. We have beautiful nature. We have a beautiful forest, ocean, mountain. So go heal in nature. There are resources out there. So we are here today because in November 22nd is a International Survivors of Suicide Loss Day all over the world, and many events happen around that day. And just let's reflect on the language. So we're talking about survivors of suicide or survivors of suicide loss, to be more specific. Why do we say it out loud so easily? And I just want to be mindful that we do survive when we've experienced suicide loss. It's very, very difficult. It's a very difficult loss to incorporate, accommodate, process, digest, and we basically survive. It's a huge impact, and I'll try to explain why we talk about survivors of suicide loss. So, who are we or who are they? Survivors of suicide loss are those impacted by suicide. So suicide drops like a bomb in our lives and it irradiates. So it has an impact around. How many people are impacted by suicide, by one suicide? I say many. Many years ago, books would say 10 people. We now know it impacts a lot. And maybe an example is if we lose a youth in a high school, who is impacted? The parents, the teachers, the fellow students, people who knew them, the other parents, people who work at the school. So huge impact on those around a suicide. Uh, Also, Brad was talking about social isolation. I want to be mindful that people are isolated. That doesn't mean that there are not a lot of people impacted by suicide. Our hope is through the BCBH and our support groups to bring people together and find each other and connect. Talking about what we do, we call this work postvention. So postvention is the work we do to help you, family, friends to cope with the suicide loss. So in suicidology, we talk about prevention, intervention, but there's that postvention piece so important, which means helping those who are impacted. A few important key ideas. So how do we define, or I like to define suicide? Suicide is just the result of a perfect storm due to emotional pain. So it's not just one variable. He died because he was depressed. He died because he was struggling with mental illness. It is the perfect storm, multivariable, many things that collide in one moment. And usually it has to do with emotional pain. Emotional pain is our umbrella. You might say depression. You might say he lost his job. You might say broke up with a boyfriend. Anything, all that under emotional pain. So what happens with emotional pain? We have a threshold for physical pain. We know what is your worst physical pain. It might be tooth, headache, migraine, stomach ache. Emotional pain is the same thing. It has a threshold. And if we reach that threshold, thoughts of suicide happen. So it is about emotional pain. Most suicide have to do emotional pain, and most suicide are multivariable. So when we search for answers, there's not just one answer. Um, Suicide happens when that moment or that threshold, that pain goes over the threshold and an opportunity appears. That's all. So many people think about suicide but don't find the opportunity. So many people think about suicide but don't reach that, the pain doesn't reach that threshold. So we're talking when we're talking about suicide, we're talking about suicide being a human experience. It is human. It is human to experience pain. It is human to experience mental illness. It is human. Grief is just the reaction we have when we experience the loss. We don't choose what we feel, we just feel. We might feel angry, guilty, sad, frustrated, resentful, anything. We don't choose what we feel, we just feel. So allowing feels and acknowledging and honoring our feelings is very important. What we do with our feelings may vary, and it's important. What's the outlet? How do we cope with that? What do we do? So grief is just a reaction. Bereavement is the work or the process we need to do after we lose someone. And mourning is really the external expression of grief. So this is just for information. Important other key ideas is secondary victimization, is what Brad was saying. It comes from the result from cruel, judgmental, or insensitive comments people make. Let me tell you, I've been running support groups for a long time. I've been working with people impacted by suicide for a long time. And a very common topic that we discuss is awful things people say. Or I would just say people don't understand what you're going through if they haven't gone through that. So I could give you a lot of examples, which I won't. But if you search in your experience, you might say, that was what was said was not nice. That didn't feel right. Right? So it happens to most people. And again, people who haven't experienced suicide loss, very difficult, very hard, but they have a very hard time to get it and to know what's right to say. Secondary losses, a very important topic. So you may have lost your person, but secondary losses are kind of like the waves, the other losses in connection to the primary loss. So an example is if you have lost a child, maybe saying graduation, wedding, grandchildren. Secondary losses might be I lost my husband, and it may say there's nobody to help me at home. Now I'm the primary caregiver for my children. So secondary losses is very important to acknowledge and to know that also has a space in a grieving process, and that's part of grieving. Another very important piece attached to suicide loss is acknowledging trauma. It's not just any regular loss. I remember a woman saying, my mom died by suicide, and her suicide was not traumatic. Traumatic was the way she lived. That's kind of like an exception because most suicide are traumatic. Why are they traumatic? And I can give you a few examples. They usually happen without any warning. So they're sudden deaths. They're usually violent and no matter the means, but they're also aggressive, meaning they spill in images, they spill in pain. So many levels why a suicide can be traumatic. What is trauma? We need to understand what's trauma there. Trauma is not in your head. Trauma happens to your body. How can I explain trauma to you? Somebody broke into your house, without any knowledge, and the alarm system went on, turned on. And you're trying to process the grief, but the alarm system it's still running. That's what happens to your body. Your nervous system is turned on, and it's protective. What happens is your body's turned on to protect you, to letting you know you won't be caught by surprise again. But we need to do something to calm the nervous system down and to turn off the alarm. So trauma, in John Dubay words, and John Dubay is one of our supervisors, trauma is a response that is a hardwired physiological response that left activated impacts an individual physical, emotional, mental, social, spiritual well-being. So it impacts all areas of our lives. Again, a couple of particularities and why suicide loss is so different than others: suddenness, violent aggressiveness, that guilt piece. I should have seen it coming. I should have done something. Sometimes we tend to understand, we see what we call signs in retrospective. Oh, they did mention this, or did they say that? But it's very hard for the human eye or the human heart to acknowledge. I was studying psychology. My friend was studying psychology. She did mention things. Nobody, not my teachers, not my friends, not other colleges, nobody noticed. How can you? So guilt comes up when we say we should have done something different. We couldn't. The question of the why kind of usually is around there. It becomes an obsessive search for why did this happen. When I work with people, we do some search, but there's usually we come to the conclusion again that's multivariable. There's not just one explanation, and we have to come to terms with that. We feel that we need to make sense out of something that doesn't make sense. Again, it's one event within a lifetime. It has a huge emotional effect on us, an emotional turmoil effect on us. And as what Brad was saying, it holds a lot of stigma and taboo still to today. And the stigma and taboo comes from the story of suicide. People were kicked out of towns. People were not able to be put in graves because it was not sacred. They had committed sin. It was very linked to sin. It's not today. And we have moved from there. We don't even say committed suicide because they didn't commit a crime. They just suicided. They just died. So stigma and taboo, we're doing a hard work to walk away from it. Other variables that have to do with this: who was the person who died? Was it a child? Was it my partner? Was it somebody I depended on? So that I call this the layers of the onion, the peels of the onion, the skin on the onion, different variables. What were have your previous experiences been with loss and death? What's your support system like? What are your cultural or religious beliefs? What are your inner resources? All those play a variable in how you process such a loss. Survivors of suicide or suicide survivors usually we call it they experience traumatic bereavement. So they have to deal with grief, but they also have to deal with trauma. And we cannot move through the grief if we haven't done something for the trauma, meaning if we haven't helped the body calm down the nervous system. So acknowledging trauma within this type of grief, very important. And the other piece is that sometimes people who have been impacted by suicide think about suicide themselves, and it's very scary. I remember a woman who I interviewed for my book, and I asked her, help me understand. Her son had died by suicide. I said, help me understand where these thoughts of suicide come from. And she said, for her it was two things. This may be helpful for you. One, she said, if I can walk the path, I may find the answers and understand. We knew that was not possible, but that was the fantasy. Second, it was the excruciating pain she was going through. So thinking about suicide doesn't mean necessarily that you're going to follow through it means you're human and you're experiencing huge, huge emotional pain. And you need to find support. So treating traumatic bereavement, it's about building resources, processing the trauma, and moving through the grief. So building resources, what does that mean? And what do we do, as Brad was saying, in our support groups? And he talked a lot about connection, very important. So you might feel socially isolated, people just don't get it. So finding connection, that's what we offer in our support groups. The other piece I think it's very important is what you're doing here today. So it's connection, you're here, you're all sitting here. But secondly is learning, educating yourself, as I did. What is this I'm going through? What's normal? What's not normal? What is expected? What do people who are bereaving do? What are people who are grieving a suicide? What's the suicide different? Why is suicide different? Learning will help you cope a little bit better and know what you can do and what this all means. If you don't um, learn about your process, you're going to be walking more in kind of like with your eyes closed in a very obscure place. And this is like learning is like a little light. In connection is like the hand that holds you and helps you walk through the darkness. So at the end, again, what helps? Connecting with those who understand what you're going through. I would say find your tribe. Let BCBH, Crisis Center, other organizations connect you with others in similar situations. That's what you're here for too. Seeing others that look just as normal as you and I, or as Brad, who have this experience of losing someone to suicide. This is your tribe. This is people that know what you're going through. And again, learning more about what you are experiencing, and very important, being gentle with yourself. You can't rush yourself. We grieve for as long as we love. In grieving, just say it says we love the person and we'll remember them. But as Brad was said earlier, there's the possibility to experience growth in time and change and transform yourselves. Let me stop sharing and add a few comments that I have written here. Um, mm, okay, I think. Oh, and very important. So if you ask me not about advice, but one thing I've learned from the people I have met that it's so important, honoring your feelings and honoring your needs. Your needs might change over your grief experience, but your needs are beautiful and your needs need to be met. Talking, not talking, walking, not talking, sharing, not sharing, and staying home. Whatever your needs are, just acknowledging them and observing them. They will change over time. So honoring your needs and letting people know what your needs are. People tend to have the best intentions, but don't necessarily the best outcomes. So letting people know what you need is always very helpful. Thank you. So I hope that's helpful and we can open the questions. Happy.
Thank you so much, Jessica. For those of you who might have any questions, feel free to use the raise hand icon so we can call you in sequence and be organized with this. Otherwise, if you are not feeling comfortable articulating your question, you may use the chat and we'll open it up to people.
And if you're not able to operate the icons or use the chat, if you just put your hand up in front of your camera, we'll see you as well. So we'll find you that way if you have a question. I know that sometimes this technology can be a little intimidating, even for me when I was trying to give my slide presentation. Part of the program was cutting out part of my slide and I didn't know how to fix it. So I was running a little bit on one wing. But anyways, we're here to take your questions if you have any.
Or maybe
And
comments on the
yes, or
webinar as
comments as
well.
well. Yes.
I have put a little bit of message on the chat. So one of the things that we do while we're waiting for people to ask questions is a training and education like this. So we wanted to continue offering anything that will help you, our community, feel seen and supported in your grief. So if you have, anything to say, hopefully you could take a moment to answer our survey so we can improve offerings like this. I can see a hand up. Melanie, go ahead.
Hi, sorry, my audio was off. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Yes, a big thank you to BC Bereavement, and you, Jessica. It's been about almost 6 years for me, and the journey has ebbed and flowed. And I lost another dear friend a year ago, last month, also to suicide. And his wife is a very, very dear friend to me. And, she's struggling and she comes over every week, but it's extremely difficult to support. As I'm not, I'm still on that grief journey. And so, any advice you would have as to accompany her, given she's still in the trauma phase versus grief and not very open to seeking resources, and more relies on my support, having lived through it. And so any advice you have would be welcome.
Brad, do you want to answer that?
I will. The question was, and I'm sorry I didn't see who was talking. I was writing down things that were going on the sideline. So I saw Susan Parker has a question and would like to answer some of the others as well. So who was asking the question about
It's
what you
Melanie.
can do?
Yeah, Melanie, and just to put it into
Oh,
context, I lost my husband to suicide almost 6 years ago. We have two children. My son is 21 and my daughter is 16. And we are survivors, and it's the journey has ebbed and flowed. I have relied heavily on therapy in the first 2 years, and BC bereavement for additional kind of group environment, which has been very, very helpful. And now with my friend who lost her husband to suicide, and my kids relied on him as well. So it was really a double whammy for my children, and then for my dear friend who is left alone, with also some physical challenges. And so she is very much struggling and relying on me for support, and I don't have, I have some resources, but how would I best further support her if she's not open to therapy and not open to seeking groups such as this?
wow, that's heavy. I'm sorry for your loss. It's a that's sadness there, that's for sure. And it's when I hear you talk of your story and how you can relate to her loss, that will of course that at first is the first light at the end of the tunnel for her. She will have someone, as you may remember from your support group experience, the sameness, the fact that you're not alone will carry many people through some very troubled times. How old how long has her husband been gone? How
So
long has
he passed away 1 year ago last month.
okay. Okay, so and she's opposed to a support group for help to find someone to deal with this.
Yeah, she does not want any
Do you still have
support.
do you still have your notes from the support group that you went through? Do you have that
Yes, and I went
written
through the
too?
training as well, and so
Oh,
I've relied on that, but it's really hard on me as
yes.
well, right? As a survivor of grief and my own journey, and he was a dear friend of mine too. And so it's really it's tough, but I'm there for her, but she is very much struggling. So
As a
So
clinical, yeah, go ahead, Brad.
go ahead. A solution that doesn't jump out. The grief is a process. She's fortunate that she has you who understands that the human spirit is amazingly powerful. And while I have, if she doesn't want to talk with a therapist and is opposed to a support group, then perhaps maybe you could introduce her to some sort of podcast or video presentations on YouTube that to help people deal with the process of grief, finding some way for her to stay connected and engaged with understanding the process that she's going through. My hope would be that at some point she would say, "Oh, I'm ready to be with someone who can also hold me," because I agree with you. Your load is heavy already, right? So perhaps if you don't get the answer you seek here in this forum, then please reach out to me at the BCBH and I'll help you also with that. Jessica, you had something?
Yeah, thank you, Melanie, for your question. I think, and I can see in the chat some people saying they're hesitant about maybe joining a group or maybe doing therapy or maybe even moving through grief. I can tell you, I'm as a counselor, I would not go to just any counselor because people who are not experiencing dealing with traumatic loss might put you through something that you don't want to go through. So sometimes we don't have to talk about what happened in order to heal. We have to talk about what's happening after the experience. So sometimes people find it hard to say, I'm going to therapy and I'm going to be put through it again. I'm going to have to share details. I'm going to have to re-experience it. Or thinking they're going to into a group to re-experiencing it. That's not the goal. The goal is you've been impacted by something very difficult. How can you accommodate that in your life? How can you go back to functioning with such a huge impact? So be mindful and do some research who you're going, which groups you're joining, who you're talking about your experience, who the counselor is. Are they experiencing in dealing with traumatic loss? Because otherwise it's going to be challenging. Melanie, in order and as of your friend, she has you, and it might be a lot for you to hold space for her. And again, maybe she's just afraid of what going getting help means. And the other piece is acknowledging that she's not just experiencing loss, she's experiencing trauma, and she needs special work on the trauma, not only the grief.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Thank you.
Okay, Jessica and Brad. There's a question in the chat from Veronica that says, "How if I just not want to get better, just not want to be healed?" You comment on that.
I have heard this before, and I think what I've heard before is not healing is a way of not letting people go. And I am totally against the concept of people letting people go. We don't let them go. You don't have to let your person go. You have to bring them into your lives. They're not physically here, but they're in your life. So you can hold on to your grief, hold on to your person, but move through life. So giving up your grief or moving through your grief doesn't mean, or forgetting doesn't mean that you won't love them anymore, that you'll forget about them. That won't happen. It means you're connecting with life again and finding them in your life.
Thank
And
you,
I would add
Jessica.
one thing to that
Go
as
ahead.
well. The pain that we sometimes feel and the emotional upset that we experience drives us to places much like what Jessica was talking about. And still, if you can calm yourself, look inside, acknowledge the emotion, and make room for the possibility that there is hope somewhere. And I would like to point out to you, you are here. I don't mean to belittle you for showing up here in any way whatsoever, but the fact that you participate in this forum and ask that question tells me as a therapist that there is something there inside you that wants to move forward. There are therapists, as Jessica has said, who will hold you in that space and help you through that. And not every therapist is the answer. So please hang on to that little glimmer that you expressed here tonight. There is hope.
Thank you. There's a question from Douglas. Will you ever stop grieving if you can't get angry at the person who died?
Will you ever stop grieving if you can't get angry at the person who died? I don't know that the goal of stopping grieving is actually what you're after, Douglas. Grief is a lifelong process. The memory of the person who's passed will always be there. And the process of getting moving anger from your body is part of the grieving and mourning process. They live in the same house. You are an emotional creature. Fear and joy, sadness and anger are very tight friends, and they all live in the same place. So I encourage you to be curious about that. You don't have to get rid of the grief. The idea is that we build resilience and become bigger than the grief so that that memory does not necessarily die. Does that help? Can't see you. There's so many faces.
And
It's
it's
okay.
interesting that feelings are very complex and not very clearly divided. So we feel many different things sometimes at the same time, sometimes one on top of the other, and you may feel angry and sad and frustrated and guilty at the same time, and you may go back and you might not feel angry at all. And that's totally normal. Again, we don't choose what we feel, we just feel.
Mm.
So nobody has a right to tell you to move through grief. You have to do one, two, three, and feel this and that. That's not the way it goes. It's just observing, feeling, letting that happen, expressing that, and see how it changes, and if it changes over time, and if new feelings come up, or maybe they don't. So it's just allowing. And
Okay. Thank you, Jessica. We acknowledge you, Nancy. Thank you for your appreciation for this presentation. So there's a question from Linda asking why is the so many women?
can you just put a Sherry happy in the queue? I just see her raising her hand. Just put her in the queue for
Signed
questions
up a long time
so she
ago.
can lower her hand. Oh, and Sue, yeah,
Oh, I couldn't see. Sorry.
yeah, that's why.
Yeah,
And I
Susan, go ahead.
Oh,
no, okay, yeah,
Oh no.
sorry.
Is there anyone I couldn't see? Sorry.
There's
Susan.
Sherry, I think Susan. There are a couple of hands raised up. Stacy.
Okay. I'm sorry. I gave you
yeah,
the host feature. Okay, I
I
should
have
be able to see it now.
I have a question. I
Go
know
ahead.
it was brought up about uh the trauma and trauma from suicide. And so I'm just 8 months into losing my 40-year husband, my husband of 40 years. And I don't know what I went through, and I still don't know what I'm going through, but I'm learning to understand it, or I'm learning to understand and forgive myself for going through all this stuff. But when they say, I didn't know what I was going through was any different from anybody else who had just lost somebody from cancer or like I don't know. Is my grief more intense than somebody else's grief who may have lost their partner from cancer or from a slower sort of like a death, like a biological death? Because um yeah, mine was a sudden shock. And somebody said, oh yeah, you have trauma. And I'm going, oh, okay, but I'm just trying to cope, but I don't know if it's more intense than what a normal death it would be. Can I try to explain? I don't know if I can try and explain that.
You've done an excellent job. Go ahead, Jessica. I can see you chomping at the bit there.
You are totally right, Susan. So, and I don't mean to say it's more than others. I'm just saying there's an extra layer. And
Is
you
there? Okay,
the
because
the extra layers is that piece when you say it came out of nowhere. I was not expecting it. I was unprepared. That's trauma. When something
Well,
happens
y-
and you're not prepared and it shocks you,
yeah,
your
yeah.
body responds.
The thing is too is that we're talking about suicide as a stigma, and again, I have not disclosed that it was suicide to of my neighborhood friends because of the stigma. And sometimes they will ask me, how did he die? And I just either had to lie or say something. He was ill before that. He had Parkinson's disease, but it was his passing was very, very sudden. But it was basically it was the depression that came from Parkinson's, and how I just say that it ate up his brain, and it killed him. And that caused his suicide because he just couldn't take it anymore. And I don't know how to explain that in the word suicide, but I do say that the pain of the Parkinson's shortened his life, and he died from it. But I'm still going through that stigma of it. So it's the first time. I mean, I was even afraid to show my face in this group. So I'm glad I'm doing that. But I'm still trying to live with that stigma. I haven't told anybody. No, I don't. There's only a few people that know, just because I have to really trust them, so that trust those people that aren't going to judge my husband or me.
Susan, this is your tribe. These are people that understand what you're going through. There,
Yeah,
you can see the hearts, the reactions there. People
yeah,
understand.
yeah,
I,
yeah,
I would never tell somebody who's lost somebody to suicide. You have to tell people.
well, I know, and then people expect me to say, and yeah,
It might there's it's challenging when you're telling the response is not what you expect, but it's also
yeah,
very hard to keep it a secret and to have
yeah,
to lie. So
yeah,
sometimes finding a middle answer to say what happened to my husband is something very difficult to talk about at the moment. I'm not ready to
that's them,
share.
yeah,
Will respect I will invite you to respect my privacy and help you navigate that.
yeah. And then another thing too is because he was of another religion, and because he committed suicide, or he took his life. He can't be buried, or he said in his note that he left me a note that, I can't be buried now. Please cremate me. How can I tell that to his family? Because his family, I've already cremated him, but I don't know what to do with his ashes, because it's it's very confusing. I haven't, but then again, people say, well, it will come on, you'll make the decision when it's time to make that decision. So maybe that's what I'm doing. I don't know. I'm
It's
just trying to
exactly what
stay
you're doing. You're doing
at
a
peace
wonderful
with
job.
myself through the whole thing, and not be hard on myself to try to do the right thing, because I have to do what's good for him.
I'll just throw in on top of the wisdom that Jessica gave you, and that is that first of all, the BCBH Suicide Loss Support Group is perfectly suited for your situation.
Yeah.
And I'd like to remind you that you're not just dealing with trauma, Susan, you're also dealing with tremendous loss. And
Yeah.
the loss that you've suffered is unique in that it came suddenly. Even though he was ill, you weren't expecting it at that time. And it is different even from the traumatic loss of a homicide. In a homicide, we can make someone else accountable for that loss. But suicide is unique. So you've done well to be here. Congratulations for your courage for showing up in this space. This is probably a very significant step for you. So wonderful to have you here with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Susan, for sharing your vulnerability. Go ahead, Jessica.
There was a question before Susan's that we didn't answer. The question
Yeah.
is why
Mm-hmm.
so many women?
Mm-hmm.
Can I answer that?
Go for it, Brett.
Because big boys don't cry, don't you know? One of the biggest things that I overcome as a therapist is in my therapy with men is the idea that they have permission to have emotions, and it shows up in many places. I saw one of my classmates in the in the gallery here earlier tonight, and I did my 3 years of practical training as a therapist with something started out like 50 women, and in the end of it, there was 5 men and 32 women graduated after a 3 year course in therapeutic training. It's changing, but for many, many, many years, men were not allowed to show the emotion of grief or sadness. Men have typically only had two emotions, happy or angry, and you better not be around when the second one's showing. So we're changing that. It's lovely to see the men that are here. Thank you, fellas, for showing up. It matters. We can make a difference. We have to give men permission to show emotion.
Very important. You can move from there with very specialized help. And there's help available in BC. Okay.
I encourage you to reach out to thank you. And I would like also to acknowledge your courage, Stacy, that in spite of the difficulty that it was for you to ask the question, you stuck through it. That's courage. That's courage. Take heart. Don't
I'd
be
like to
alone
say
with it.
something.
Who's it?
That's me. Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can hear you.
Angie.
I just wanted to say something when Tracy said Stacy, her friend didn't want to get help or seek therapy or anything related to her betterment. When my son died by suicide, I was distraught and I didn't know what to do. But the first thing I thought of is I have to take care of myself because I have other children and they will depend on me. So even as I was crying because of my son's death, I was dialing BC 211 looking for help. How do I help me so that I can help my children survive this catastrophe?
Mhm.
I also wanted to ask about EMDR. Has anyone gone through it and does it really help? And then there's a group on Facebook that I've joined called Helping Parents Heal, but all they're very, very focused on connecting with the afterlife, like mediums and seances and talking to the dead. Can you say something about that? So my question is about EMDR and connecting with your departed loved ones.
Yes. EMDR is a technique many therapists or counselors use and learn to process a trauma. So finding a therapist who works with EMDR can be helpful for specific memories that are kind of like repeating themselves. So for sure, you can go on the BC Clinical Counseling Association website. They have a directory of therapists in BC, and you can search for therapists who work with EMDR. It's one of the techniques that to process trauma for sure. And in terms of the life, people do different things, Vanji. People, again, honoring your needs, whatever helps you. If that helps you, and I go for it. I would say experiencing death and loss moves us to trying to understand life and maybe even understand death. So, what does God mean now? What does death mean now? What's about the afterlife? What does life mean? So, a lot of questions like existential questions arise. So, whatever feels right for you.
I try to imagine it and I'm like, I think I'll be so scared.
So it might not be for you. Again, respecting everybody, each other's beliefs. Again, this experience will shake your beliefs, but
Yeah.
honor your needs and do what's right for you and what feels right for you with care and just if this doesn't feel right, just don't do it.
Okay.
And
Can
protect
you
it.
repeat the name of the association where I can find EMDR
BC
therapists?
So it's BCA, a clinic CC, BCA, BC Association of Clinical Counselors. That exactly.
Thank you.
Cordelia, that's how you find them online, and they have a website, a directory of therapists that are or people who are registered.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jessica. Just before we take Justin's question, I just want to let everybody know that we may not be able to go through all of the questions in the chat, being mindful of the time. So please bear with us. Go ahead, Justin.
Oh, I was just responding to the EMDR thing. I have done EMDR. I've been living with trauma now for about 25 years. So I did find it helpful. One thing as well that sorry, just a quick tip. If you're ever going through like a really intense trauma and can't break out of it, one helpful tip is to get a physical thing, like this is a mug, and just pass it between your left and right hand. And I found that what it does is it kind of connects your left and right brain, and it kind of helps you balance out. So if you're kind of trapped in a traumatic loop, basically, that's just a little tip that I kind of learned. It's not EMDR directly, but it's EMDR adjacent, that little tip. So
Life
hopefully that
hacks.
helps
They're very
somebody.
Thank
valuable.
you. Thank you.
Justin, appreciate it. And Happy, can we make room for Sherry Whittle? She had her hand up a long time
Thank
ago.
you. Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, go
Yeah.
ahead.
Awesome. EMDR I've also done, and I found like with that last intrusive image and that the one lady had brought up, or the charge of the emotion itself is like a human battery, like, and tapping was a very good technique for me, like for taking that intensity, taking the elevator from the penthouse down to a more tolerable level. Tapping and grounding was huge. But I'm also very kinesthetic, and my mom and dad died 10 months apart, and then my brother committed suicide the following year. So and my sister died before that, so I had all my family in jars and dealt with it in a different fashion. But I don't know what my mom and dad met. They were very trauma bonded, and I've always tried to gravitate towards people dealing with loss and being a poet, writing poetry and stuff, trying to help people through loss. Like I really found my calling, but I don't want to I'm trying to listen and learn to help people in the best way possible. So I do want to come aboard with the BC bereavement. Like it's definitely a calling, I think, for me, and it's something I've done, my whole life.
We have lots of room for volunteers, Sherry. So
Yeah,
please,
I missed the first batch when I've applied once. I'm on Vancouver Island, but I keep getting emails, so I don't come to events over on the mainland. This is the first time I've gotten to participate.
thank you
And
for joining
I
us. Appreciate
found
it a lot.
with that stigma, writing a poem just on when my friend lost her son to suicide, I wrote Leave the Dark. And I wrote, Please see past my darkest days to a time I felt more choice. The darkness that took my life away was not of mine heart's choice, not my birthright, not my voice. I know I cast a shadow to challenge your view of me, but those who truly loved me will find fonder days of thee, and know that I am now set free of the grip the darkness had on me. Addiction, such a beast. I fed it and it fed on me, and I died not the man you see, but confused and disconnected. I was loved, yet felt rejected. I was darkness and misled. I couldn't feel the tears you shed, and now you're lying in your bed with all these questions in your head. Please don't feed the intellect. Don't feel saddened or regret. Your days, they are not over yet, and I need to live now through your smile. For both of us, let's walk this mile. I need you to feel connected, to know you're loved and feel accepted, to feel me smiling in your heart, to bring us closer now that we're apart. I am sorry in my heart. Please forgive me and leave the dark.
Thank you for that very
That's
much,
so
Sherry.
beautiful.
Appreciate that. There's lots of ways that we deal with trauma and loss, and writing is one, EMDR is another. There's many modalities. So find a group that works for you and just stay connected. Who's next?
Zoom is playing on me. I don't see any hands up, but I can
I
see
see Roberta
Roberta.
Bradshaw.
Yeah, go ahead, Roberta. We may take Roberta's question and one more in the chat, and then we'll close. Thank you.
Okay. Hi. I just want to thank BC Bereavement. I went through the training and I have experienced also a loss of a friend through suicide. And I just want to reiterate joining a support group and reaching out and connecting with other people is just a game changer. It really is. We're into week 5. This is my second round of traumatic loss
Oh,
support group.
oh, you're in
And
it now. That's good. Nice to hear.
oh yeah. And so this is my second round, and Happy knows who I am. And it's just a game changer. You know, I get so passionate about it because have had living that experience, and to just take the risk and reach out and connect with someone else, because isolation, and as you explained, Brad, it's we feel so alone, and there are other people, unfortunately, that have gone through similar experiences, but it's the common thread.
Sameness, yeah.
Absolutely game changer. And that's what we're into week 5. And this second group is they're becoming friends and they want to meet for coffee after. And we have coffee
Thank you.
groups and walking groups. I'm with the Heron Hospice Society of Delta. And I just want to say that it's just a game changer. So for those of you that are feeling isolated and wondering what to do with that, there are resources.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
thanks
Thank you,
again
Roberta.
to BC Bereavement. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Roberta.
Thank you
Something
so
I've
much.
learned, Roberta, in running support groups, that anybody under the the same circumstances may respond the same.
Mm.
So we think this is us. We're doing something wrong by feeling or grieving or experiencing this or that. Anybody under the same experiences shares experiences. So we grieve very different. It's very similar suicide loss.
Thank you. And I just
Yeah,
want
we
to,
just, yeah, go
so
ahead.
sorry. Go
No,
ahead,
go ahead.
Brad. Yeah, so just want to tell people or invite people to, be subscribed in our newsletter. That's where we, post our, webinars like this, and possibility of you signing up in our support group. Thank you, Roberta. I appreciate you, and how that landed to you.
And we
Right.
noticed several people want the words to the poem that Sherry read us. So if you could put that in the chat, that would be great. Or do you have a way to do that? Okay. So she's gonna post it into the chat, folks. You can copy and paste it from there. Are you able to do that?
Sorry, what was that, Brad?
It, I'm just asking if
Yeah.
Sherry can paste that into
Oh,
the
Sherry.
chat or
Oh,
not.
yeah. You gave her a tall order. But okay, I'll go with the last question that we will be answering tonight in the chat. I hope nobody's hand is raised. I had an old friend, this from Liana. I had an old friend recently committed suicide, died by suicide. He was a good friend of my husband. My husband is not wanting to talk, and I really want to talk to him about it. How can we start the conversation when we are both trying to grieve in our own way?
Do you want to jump in, or shall I jump in, Brett? You choose.
The first thing that pops into my mind, and I'll get out of the way, is tell them you're here tonight. Talk about this conversation that we had. It may be a starter. Go ahead, Jessica.
Um, my experience is that sometimes we feel that we of course we experience the same loss, but we experience it differently. Everybody grieves differently. So maybe within the family. So what happens when I see families is they say, "Oh, we lost someone." Yes, everybody lost the same person, Jack, Jim, or whatever their name was. But everybody had a different relationship with them. And everybody has their own personality and their own needs. So your need to talk is your need. Their need not to talk is their need. So that's why we in our groups we encourage people to find their own support group and not bring the partner or their spouse or their sibling within the group, because we grieve differently. Again, it's about very individual needs. So you may say, I would love to talk to you, but maybe you're not the person I can talk to about this, and I respect your silence. And if you want to talk, I'm here. And if you don't want to talk, I understand, and I'll find somebody to talk to. So again, it's about meeting people's needs. And as Brad
There's
said,
also the, yeah,
you can try and say, I've learned there's no stigma within, we can share this. Yeah. Go ahead, Brad.
there's a tendency when we're in pain to withdraw. That is often a first response. But I tell the story many times about the Christmas dinner that I was at with my wife who was choking. She got up and left the table and went to the kitchen because she didn't want to see, she didn't want people to see that she was choking. And fortunately, somebody got up from the table and said, "What are you doing?" And found her there struggling. Being alone is not always the way that we need to go. It's a part of it, yes, to be alone while we gather, perhaps, but we are a tribe, as Jessica has said many times. We are a community, and you will see over and over and over again throughout the history of the world that healing comes in groups. Our indigenous people in this area specifically understand the idea of healing as a community. That is the process that we're promoting at the BC Bereavement Helpline and in this group here tonight as well. You're not alone. That's the message. You're entitled to your pain, and you're entitled to go through the process in your way. But it's very important that you remain connected to spirit and other, so that you don't create your own abyss where you flounder around without direction or purpose. You are worth more than that. I'll stop. Thank you for the question. Appreciate it a lot.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Jessica and Brad. I will be turning it over to Jessica for the closure, but before that, let me just share a few resources. I know Jessica mentioned that we are having this as a preparation of the International Suicide Survivor Loss Day on Saturday, November 22nd. So we encourage you guys to find an activity that fits for you. You may also search through the BC Crisis Center for other resources that they have. And I think from what we have searched, they have a webinar that is going to be ongoing from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. So feel free to search on that. Also, we do have our upcoming webinar on December 1st, and that is the holidays in grief, making space for both. So hopefully you guys can join us. I've shared the link in the chat. And again, if you are subscribed in our newsletter, we send our invitation through that as well. Um, if you used to be or part of our support group alumni for BC Bereavement Helpline, we have an exclusive event for you guys. We are hosting a um, drop-in session, holiday drop-in session on December 15th, and that's going to be from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. And I have sent the invite in the email. Hopefully you guys got it. If not, then please reach out to our our email. I'll go ahead and put that in the chat. And again, this is only open to the previous support group alumni of BC Bereavement Helpline, um, giving space for you guys, making you feel seen. Unfortunately, as much as we wanted to accommodate everybody, we want to give this to the people who have taken part of our support group. And but then again, we still have our December 1st that is free for everyone to join. So that is for public. Feel free to sign up to that. And with that, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. I'll be handing it over to Jessica for the closure of tonight's session. Go ahead, Jessica.
Before you get into that, Jessica, just our website is bcbh.ca. You can, if you have questions that are unanswered or you need direction, and you can find us there easily. Yeah, that's the best I can do. Sorry. Thank you. Sorry, Jessica. Carry on.
No, totally welcome the information, Brad. So Maybe some of you have not been through our support groups. Maybe some of you are going through our support groups or have been. We always close our gatherings by sharing a short reading. So I'll be reading this for you. And this reading it's called "We Remember Them." In the rising of the sun and its going down, we remember them. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we remember them. In the warmth of the sun and the peace of summer, we remember them. In the rustling of the leaves and the beauty of autumn, we remember them. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we remember them. When we are weary and in need of strength, we remember them. When we are lost and sick at heart, we remember them. When we have joys we yearn to share, we remember them. So as long as we live, they too shall live, for they are now a part of us, as we remember them. And the invitation is when we were planning this gathering today, we decided to do it before International Survivors of Suicide Loss Day, which is Saturday. So the invitation is for you to do something special for yourselves, for the people you remember today and you will remember Saturday. Maybe doing something special. It might be a walk, it might be going to the ocean, it might be throwing a rock, it might be writing a letter, lighting a candle, praying, meditating, whatever feels soothing for you and allows you to remember them and connecting to their life story. And again, many events happening that day, November 22nd. And as Happy was saying, Crisis Center is hosting one. You can see it on their website, 10 to 12 p.m. Thank you, everybody, for being here and for showing your support. You may want to write in the chat one takeaway before we leave, and or post little reaction if that feels right for you. And
Thank
I
you all
have
for
a candle
attending.
here, and I will light it out for you, everyone.
Mine goes out too.